What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some battles in the Open Ultra League submitted to the channel by Palitro who's running Clefable, Aerodactyl with the newly buffed Steel Wing, and Braviary also running Steel Wing, as well as Fly, a new move it received this season. So with that being said, let's just get straight into the question of the day. What do you think is the most insignificant moveset update this season? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Alright, so go into the first battle, Clefable into Giratina, so a very positive matchup for us. The opponent is going to be running Shadow Claw, so not quite as dominant, but the opponent then swaps into their Cresselia. Now, we don't have an amazing response to Cresselia, so we might just chip with our Clefable, and then eventually swap into one of our two flying type Pokemon in the back. So we let the Grass Knot go through, we're now going to swap into Aerodactyl, and Aerodactyl is part Rock, so it will take neutral damage from the Grass Knot. So let's see, the opponent goes for the Moonblast anyways, as that does do a lot more damage. We're now going to overfarm throwing just before they make it to the next charge move. Rock Slide coming through, grabbing a shield from the opponent. We make it to a second Rock Slide before the opponent throws their energy, so that's really good. Rock Slide doesn't quite take them out, and the opponent banks a ton of energy. They then swap back into their Giratina, so quite an interesting play by the opponent. We're happy to let the Aerodactyl go down. We've got quite a lot of energy on the Clefable as well, so we go straight for the Moonblast. Moonblast does big damage to the Giratina. We can safely no-shield the first charge move here as they go for a Shadow Sneak. We're now going to swap into Braviary, and we can get a massive Steel Wing farm down. The opponent makes it to another charge move. It's just going to be a Dragon Claw though. That doesn't do too much damage, and we come out with a Fly or a Close Combat loaded. The opponent comes in with Cobalion, so we go for a Fly. Fly is only neutral damage here, and the opponent no-shields the first charge move, but at this point I think we just go straight Fly. So yeah, we're going for the Fly number 2. Fly is going to grab the final shield from the opponent. We do still have 2 shields. We're going to use the first one as the opponent goes for a Sacred Sword. We're now going to swap back into our Clefable, and we perfectly catch the charge move from the Cresselia as they go for a Grass Knot, but they do get the farm down there, so we need to be able to go for a full Steel Wing farm down from this point. We're going to shield the Moonblast. Can we get the farm down? Yes, we're able to do so. We come out with a Close Combat loaded, and Close Combat is going to be enough damage to take out the Cobalion, and we're able to take that game. So going into the next battle, see Clefable into Swampert, so bit of a neutral-ish matchup. Obviously we don't want to see the Swampert aligned to our Aerodactyl, but also Steel Wing is resisted on the Braviary as well, so not ideal for us. We're just going to go for the Moonblast. The opponent makes it to back-to-back Hydro Cannons, winning the CMP tie as well, and getting the Clefable incredibly low. So this is quite dangerous. If they've got something like an Electric or a Rock-type Pokemon in the back, it is going to be very difficult. But we do land the Moonblast. We can now go for Meteor Mash, and Meteor Mash will be grabbing a shield from the opponent. They swap into their Staraptor. We come in with our Aerodactyl, and we're going straight for the Rock Slide. The opponent possibly farming to the back-to-back Close Combats, but they just let the Rock Slide go through there. Quite a strange play from the opponent, but we are going to no-shield the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon actually doesn't quite take us out, and we make it to a Rock Slide. Aerodactyl, you have surprised me there. I did not think Aerodactyl was going to be bulky enough to tank that, but I think we should be looking pretty good here. We've just got to be careful though, because Pidgeot can obviously debuff us with the Feather Dance. Quite likely that they do just go for the Feather Dance here, so we're going to use our shield. It is the Feather Dance, which is unfortunate. We're now going to swap. We try to catch the next move, and that's not ideal for us because we do clear our debuff, but they can just go and debuff us again. So we go for the Fly, grab the shield from the opponent. Now here, I think they're just going to Feather Dance once again, and they do, so we do correctly call it, and now we should be looking pretty comfortable. They still have to throw 2 more charge moves to get rid of us, so we go for the Fly. Fly does a decent amount of damage considering it is now debuffed, and we can safely shield this up. It doesn't matter if they Feather Dance us. We can go straight for the next charge move. We go for Close Combat here, and Close Combat will be enough to take out the Pidgeot, and we're able to take that game. So going into the next battle, we see Alolan Muck in the lead, so we're going to swap out straight away. Turns out they're actually running Snarl, so that probably isn't that bad of a matchup for the Clefable since we do resist the Snarl damage, but we do swap into our Aerodactyl, going for a Rock Slide. Rock Slide, unfortunately, not going to do too much damage to the very bulky Giratina, and they can now just barely outpace us to the next charge move, but Dragon Claw won't quite take us out from this range, so we can actually commit to the Earth Power. Earth Power, I actually don't know if this does more damage than a Rock Slide, since Rock Slide is going to be stab, but it doesn't really matter. We get them very low to the point where we can just come in with our Clefable and farm them down. But no, we actually come in with the Braviary instead, and the opponent goes for a Dragon Claw. We can now get the Steel Wing farm down, and the opponent comes in with a Poliwrath, so we can go straight for the fly here, throwing it before the opponent makes it to a potential Icy Wind to debuff our attack, and that is really good for us. We get the first shield from the opponent, so we're going to use our shield now up against the Icy Wind and now swap immediately into our Clefable. The opponent responds with the Alolan Muck, and they do just barely outpace us to the charge move. The opponent is going to full send the Sludge Wave. That does huge damage, but we are resisting the Snarl damage, so they probably won't be able to fast move farm us down. We go for a Meteor Mash there, no shielded by the opponent. We could have made it to a second Meteor Mash, but we actually choose not to throw there, and I kind of agree with that play, because otherwise the opponent could just no shield, come in with the Poliwrath, get the farm down, and then just double Icy Wind us. But instead we're going to commit to the full Steel Wing farm down. The opponent recognizing that, so they swap back into their Poliwrath. We're going for fly number one, grabbing the shield, and can we take out the Poliwrath from this range with a second fly? No, we are barely not able to do so, and unfortunately Icy Wind will certainly KO the Braviary from this range, and we do unfortunately lose that game. But going into the next battle, we see a Poliwrath in the lead, so good to see it here. Obviously we've got two flying types in the back, but because they're running Steel Wing, they're not that good matchups up against that Poliwrath, especially Aerodactyl being weak to the water typing and Rock Slide also being resisted. Here we're going to swap into our Aerodactyl, catch unfortunately a Night Slash, which would have been resisted on our Clefable, but now if they spam these Night Slashes, they're actually going to add up really quickly, and you can see already we are incredibly low, so we are going to let the next Night Slash go through. We do just barely make it to a Rock Slide, but Rock Slide shouldn't be KOing the Gliscor from this range, so the opponent does correctly no shield it. We do have a shield advantage though, and they should only make it to another Night Slash, so we can safely let this move go through. Night Slash is resisted, doesn't do too much damage, but the opponent has a Registeel in the back, and this is really tricky. We do farm to 100 energy, go for the Moonblast. Moonblast really doesn't do much damage at all, and we're just going to force the opponent to throw their energy here. We might even live a Zap Cannon. We do barely live that, so we swap into our Braviary, and the opponent is obviously just going to stay in, go for a Zap Cannon immediately, and hope for the debuff. And Zap Cannon does unfortunately debuff our attack. We're now going to go for a close combat, but this just isn't going to do too much damage now. The opponent does very easily tank that. They now come in to their Poliwrath, and we are debuffed in our defense, so they might even be able to fully counter farm us down. We're also debuffed in our attack, don't forget, so unfortunately that fly really didn't do too much damage. They go for the Icy Wind, and we can go for another fly here just before they make it to the next charge move, but we need to swap into our Clefable. We do swap, we make it to the Moonblast in time, and Moonblast will be taking out the Poliwrath, and here the opponent should be going for the farm down. We do make it to a Meteor Mash, but I don't think this is going to KO from this range. It doesn't quite take them out, but the opponent then throws their energy. What are they doing? They could have just farmed us down, but now I think we can just go for the Steel Wing, farming down the Registeel, and we're able to take that game. But definitely a misplay from the opponent there, but we will definitely take it. And into the next battle, we see Ampharos in the lead. Obviously not great for our backline whatsoever, so good to see it in the lead. They do shield up the Moonblast, which is unfortunate, and we are going to let the first move go through. They go for Thunder Punch, so it doesn't do too much damage, but they will be able to spam these Thunder Punches quite fast, so not ideal for us. The opponent is then going to swap into their Talonflame, and we can respond with our Aerodactyl. Now, with Steel Wing, they do actually resist the fast move damage, but it doesn't really matter too much, especially in even shields, because we can just farm up to nearly back-to-back Rock Slides, going for the first one, grabbing a shield from the opponent. We make it to the second Rock Slide already before the opponent throws their energy, and Rock Slide will easily one-shot the Talonflame, which is really good for us. But unfortunately, they will get a very nice farm down with the Ampharos here, which is not ideal. So we're going to come back in with the Clefable. We should be living a Thunder Punch even from our low health, so we might just let this go through, but no, we do shield up. The opponent goes for that Thunder Punch, and then they swap into a Poliwrath. So we're going straight for the Moonblast here. We have quite a lot of energy, but unfortunately that doesn't quite do enough damage to take them out, so we swap perfectly, catch the charge move onto our Braviary. The opponent goes for Icy Wind. I think they might have undercharged that, I'm not sure, or maybe they just fully charged it. Actually don't know because they are debuffed in their attack just slightly. We actually don't throw a charge move there. We come in with the Clefable, and can we take them out with a Moonblast here? They are fairly low, so Moonblast probably does take them out. But no, it barely doesn't take them out there, and unfortunately, they get to a last second charge move. Thunder Punch takes us out, and unfortunately, we end up losing that game. So into the next battle, we see Steelix in the lead. So Steelix did get nerfed this season with Breaking Swipe no longer guaranteeing a debuff, but it is still fairly strong, especially in the Open Ultra League. And here, the opponent is going to go for the charge move. I think they're less likely to bait now. So the opponent full sends the Earthquake. We do correctly shield it up. And now we can go for a Moonblast. Moonblast, not going to do too much damage here, but we can very comfortably outpace the opponent to the Moonblast. So we go for another Moonblast before they make it to Earthquake number 2. Are we going to try and make a catch here? We do try and make the catch there, but unfortunately the opponent holds onto their energy. They can now go for these Breaking Swipes. The first one doesn't get the debuff, which is good. The second one might be getting a debuff. It is a 50% chance, so they do get the debuff on the second one, and they already make it to another Breaking Swipe. Breaking Swipe is going to get another debuff. Can we get the farm down though? We do barely get the farm down. We have no HP remaining, so we just fire off whatever we can. We go for the close combat. The opponent uses their shield. We were double debuffed, and obviously close combat, not the best move to go for since we are running fly, but it doesn't really matter. The opponent comes in with Cresselia. We swap out into our Aerodactyl since it has such a rough time up against that Poliwrath. I think we're just going to fully sacrifice the Aerodactyl. That makes the most sense to me. Here we're going to go for a Rock Slide just before the opponent makes it to the second charge move. Rock Slide really doesn't do much damage, but they overfarm, allowing us to make it to another Rock Slide, and this will be nice for us as it will get Cresselia into range where we can take them out with just a Meteor Mash. So they go for the Grass Knot, taking out the Aerodactyl. We have to let this move go through here as the opponent goes for a Grass Knot, doesn't do too much damage. They then swap into their Poliwrath, maybe trying to catch a Meteor Mash, but we go for the Moonblast, and I think we've just put them into range where we can just fully farm them down. So, going to use our shield here. The opponent goes for the Scald. Scald gets the attack debuff, but that even gives us more farm, and now, unfortunately, we are debuffed though, so I don't know if a Meteor Mash would KO, so to play it safe, we go for the Moonblast, grabbing the final shield, and we outpace them to the next charge move, and Moonblast, even debuffed, takes out the Cresselia, and we're able to take that game. So going into the next battle, we see Clefable into a Toxicroak, so a fairly good lead matchup for us. They might not even be running Sludge Bomb either, because this season, Toxicroak now has access to Shadow Ball, which helps against Pokemon like Giratina and Gelatin, for example, that would otherwise do, well, be very dominant in those matchups. The opponent then swaps into Ampharos. We kind of just have to stay in this matchup. Obviously, we've got two Flying type Pokemon in the back, but we do land the Moonblast. They go for a Trailblaze, boosting up their attack. We can now go for the Meteor Mash here, as this should be enough damage, even resisted, to take out the Ampharos. So let's see what the opponent wants to do. They come back in with the Toxicroak, so we come in with our Aerodactyl, and we're going to no-shield the first charge move. The opponent full sends a Shadow Ball there, but then they swap into Greninja. We do at least make it to a Rock Slide, and Rock Slide is going to do quite a lot of damage to the Greninja. It puts them into range where we might be able to farm them down with Clefable, but we would have to double shield, so going to be very tricky this one here. We're actually going to choose to no shield. The opponent takes us out with the Hydro Cannon, and now can we get the Steel Wing farm down? Steel Wing is resisted, by the way, but Greninja is fairly glassy. They now bait with the Night Slash. They will make it to another charge move. I think we just have to commit to the full farm down, but does the Toxicroak have much energy here? We're going for the Fly. Fly should be taking out the Toxicroak here. The opponent used their final shield. They make it to another charge move, but they might be running Mud Bomb and Shadow Ball, and they are, so that's really good for us. We make it to another Fly. Fly should be taking out the Toxicroak from this range, and now it just depends, can Greninja make it to a last second charge move? They can, and unfortunately, this should be enough damage to take us out, and unfortunately, we do end up losing that game. But that was a very close game. Now into the next game, we see Zygarde in the lead. That is quite a grind to build, so fair play to the opponent there. You can see it is Best Buddy, well, I don't know if it's Best Buddy boosted, but they have got it Best Buddy because they're probably walking it for absolutely ages. Now, we're going to use our shield here. The opponent going to go for the Earthquake. Earthquake probably wouldn't do too much damage considering Zygarde is incredibly bulky, but we do play it safe. We use our shield, and now we can just take them out with a Meteor Mash. The opponent comes in with a Steel Wing Skarmory. That's really not good for us, but the opponent then swaps into their Poliwrath, and we do at least make it to an Earth Power before the opponent can go for an Icy Wind. And Earth Power does connect. It really doesn't do much damage. damage, but at this point I think we just let the Aerodactyl go down. Scald will be taking us out. They've still got 2 shields remaining, so I'm not sure how we can win this, but we do have quite a lot of energy on our Clefable, so we go for the Moonblast immediately. Moonblast takes out the Poliwrath. They come back in with the Skarmory. We make it to yet another Moonblast, but this is going to be really difficult for us. Moonblast goes unshielded. It doesn't do much damage. Skarmory looking to go for a massive farm down. We make it to another Moonblast. This might grab a shield at this point. We do grab that shield. We don't get the debuff though, which is unfortunate, and at this point I think we just have to let the first move go through. They do just settle for a Sky Attack, and now we are probably going to have to shield the next move here, as they will go for another Sky Attack. And can we outpace them? 2 back-to-back charge moves here. We're going for Fly. We don't want to debuff our defense. Honestly, I don't think it really matters. Fly does grab the shield though, and we make it to the close combat on the CMP tie, and close combat will be taking out the Skarmory, and we're able to take that game. So going into the next battle, we see Clefable into Cresselia, so a fairly neutral lead matchup. Probably going to have to swap out eventually into one of our flying type in the back just to bait out any potential answers there. But we go for the Moonblast immediately. Moonblast doesn't do much damage, but I mean, Cresselia is a very bulky Pokemon. They're actually running Future Sight, so Future Sight does significantly more damage than the Moonblast from that Cresselia. So we go for another Moonblast, grabbing a shield there. So potentially weak to the Clefable in the back. So we're going to use our shield, and then we might try and swap out of this matchup eventually. But nope, staying in, still going for another Moonblast. And Moonblast is going to be caught onto Talonflame. That's a really good catch there. I actually didn't see that at all. But we can now swap, make our own catch onto our Aerodactyl. The unfortunate thing though is that if they go for a flame charge, they might outpace us to the next charge move, and they do outpace us. Now we can still live this. We do resist everything they can throw, but that does a lot of damage. If the opponent wants to, they could potentially shield this up and then just fully Incinerate farm us down, but no, they do let that move go through. They come back in with Cresselia, and we make it to a Rock Slide before they get the Psycho Cut farm down, and Rock Slide does do some nice damage there. We are going to wait out the switch clock here and then come back in with our Clefable, go for the Moonblast. I think Meteor Mash probably takes them out from this range, but Moonblast certainly does, and they've got a Virizion in the back now. We should be looking pretty fine here. This is not a Stone Edge, so we can just safely let it go through, and the opponent probably should have farmed to the potential Stone Edge there, although they might not be running it, in which case it doesn't really matter if they bait it or not, because we will be able to make it to two back-to-back flies before they make it to 3 Sacred Swords, and here we can just safely shield that up, go for the fly, and this is double super effective. This will easily take out the Virizion, and we're able to take that game. So going into the next battle, we see Nidoqueen in the lead, so obviously not great for us whatsoever. We swap into Aerodactyl, and we should actually resist everything they would typically run if they're running Poison Fang and Earth Power. The opponent swaps into their Tapu Fini, but they do swap out quite late, and we are able to make it to another Rock Slide, and this is really nice. This should be grabbing a shield advantage here. The opponent can now just go for the full water gun farm down, but they don't. They panic. They go for the Surf there. And because we're running Steel Wing, the opponent's counts are just fully off there, and we're able to get quite a nice advantage there, grabbing that shield, and the opponent probably should have just committed to the full farm down, but now the opponent swaps back into their Nidoqueen, so we're going for a chip with the Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash does get them fairly low there, and we are going to stay in with the Clefable, let the move go through. Poison Fang is going to nearly take us out, but it doesn't quite take us out. We now come in with the Braviary, and the opponent might make it to 2 charge moves here. We're going to shield the first one. They're actually running Stone Edge, so that is very good that we shielded that first one. They now come back in with the Tapu Fini. We do overfarm just a little bit, go for the Fly, and Fly will be no shielded. We take out the Tapu Fini, and the opponent has a Wall Rain in the back now. We are running Close Combat. This is going to debuff our defense though, so Close Combat grabs the shield from the opponent. It is a CMP tie, and that's actually best case scenario, because now we can swap, clear the debuff, but the opponent is probably going to be able to outpace us to the next charge move, just barely outpacing us, and unfortunately Icicle Spear will be taking out the Braviary, and we do unfortunately lose that game. But I think even Close Combat wouldn't quite take out the Wall Rain from that range, from our Braviary at least, so we do end up losing that game. But into the next game, we're going to see the opponent safe swaps into Trevenant, and they're actually just going to concede the match there. Yeah, I mean, they probably weren't expecting to see a Braviary, to be fair to them, but yeah, not a lot they could do. Braviary, one of the hardest counters to a Trevenant, and they didn't have time for that. So into the next game, we see another Cresselia. We're going for that Moonblast straight away. Gonna no shield the first one as the opponent goes for a Moonblast of their own. We're now gonna swap into our Aerodactyl, and we can tank anything they throw, so we might just let the first move go through. Obviously Aerodactyl quite glassy, so we might save the shield for another matchup, but here we're going to go for a Rock Slide, and that looks to be a CMP tie. So Rock Slide is going to, well, it did grab a shield there. We didn't see it, but they definitely shielded, and we're actually just going to let the Aerodactyl go down. Unfortunately, that didn't quite take us out, so they get one extra Psycho Cut, and we were just very close to another Rock Slide, but we now come in with our Braviary, and the opponent swaps into Giratina, and this is a really good matchup for us, as we do double resist the Shadow Claw damage. So here, I assume we're going to stay in for a while. No shield the first move, as they only farm to, actually no, it is an Ancient Power. Ancient Power does do a decent amount of damage there, but we still tank it fairly comfortably. We're now going to shield the next Ancient Power, which is quite interesting, considering it wouldn't do too much damage. We're now going for Meteor Mash, not the Moonblast, and Meteor Mash from this range grabs the shield anyway, so that's quite good. And we can probably just let this go through, but no, we're going to double shield our Clefable here. We can now go for the Meteor Mash, and from this range, it should be taking out the Giratina there. So let's see what the opponent wants to do. They come back in with the Cresselia. They've already got a charge move loaded. Moonblast takes us out, and now it just depends, can we beat whatever's in the back? They come in with a Poliwrath. We go for the first Fly. Fly we already seen doesn't quite take them out, so we have to throw their second one straight away. Fly will be taking out the Poliwrath, but we are incredibly low now. Can we get the Bullet Punch farm down in time? Sorry, not Bullet Punch, what am I talking about? Steel Wing. The answer is no, and the opponent actually makes it to a Grass Knot before we get the farm down, or even before we make it to a Fly, and we do end up losing that game. So going into the next battle, we see Gliscor in the lead. I apologise, my commentary's been pretty rubbish the last couple of battles, but I can't be bothered to start again, so we're just going to continue as it is. We're going for a Moonblast here, and Moonblast is going to do about 40% of their health. We now swap into our Braviary, and unfortunately they are resisting the Steel Wings, but we're double resisting the Hexes, so it is a trade-off, but I think it's still a fairly positive matchup, as long as a Fly does take them out, which actually I don't know if it will here. We do throw on Alignment, so not the best timing, but Fly coming through takes out the Jellicent anyway, so it actually doesn't matter there, since the Hex doesn't register or anything like that. But here we can go for another Fly, dealing some decent damage, and as well throw on the CMP tie, which we did win, so that's best case scenario for us. They go for a Night Slash, we can come back in with our Clefable. The opponent will have to farm up a lot more than that to go for an Earthquake here, but they are running Night Slash and Aerial Ace, which is quite interesting. We can now go for a Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash is going to do quite a lot of damage here, grabs the shield from the opponent. We're now going to swap into our Aerodactyl. We try to catch the Aerial Ace. The opponent doesn't throw straight away, so they can go for the Night Slash, and we've seen this a few times now. Night Slash, incredibly spammy, but we should be able to go for the full Steel Wing farm down, but the opponent swaps into an XL Whiscash. That is a really interesting spice pick. Earth Power does about 30% of their health. We can let the move go through here. Scald, going to do a lot of damage. It will be taking us out. It just depends, can Clefable sweep this team here? As we go for a Moonblast, and Moonblast will be grabbing the final shield from the opponent. We've still got 2 shields remaining, but they can spam Mud Bomb very quickly. They actually go for Scald instead, probably hoping to debuff our attack, which makes a lot of sense. This time they go for the Mud Bomb, and we just got to be careful of a catch. We do hold on to the energy. We don't overfarm too much, and Meteor Mash will be taking them out. And can we make it to the Moonblast? Yes, we are barely able to do so, but does this take out the Whiscash? Yes, it does, and we're able to take that game. So going into the next battle, we see Clefable into Shadow Dragonite, so a great lead for us here. The opponent swaps into their Golisopod. We're going to stay in initially, let the first move go through probably, and then swap into our Braviary. That's exactly what we do here, and of course they are going to be resisting the Steel Wings, but once again we do double resist the Shadow Claw damage. They go for Liquidation, they don't get the debuff, which is nice. We can now go for a Fly, and I assume Fly probably takes them out from this range, so the opponent uses their shield, and they do barely outpace us to the charge move here, so we're going to use our shield. They bait with an X-Scissor, so not ideal, and then they swap, they catch the move onto their Tapu Fini, so really nice play from the opponent. Fly, gonna come through, still does some respectable damage, and we do make it to a second Fly, so Fly is going to do quite a lot of damage here. The opponent lets it go through, we swap into our Aerodactyl. We're actually just going to completely sacrifice it. Surf won't take us out though, so we can get the Steel Wing farm down. And the opponent comes back in with the Shadow Dragonite, and we do make it to the Rock Side, which is really nice. This should be grabbing the final shield. No, they fully sacrificed the Dragonite as well. And now we should be able to take out this Galissapod. They do have an energy advantage though, so we've got to be careful of that. We come back in with the Braviary. We're actually going to no shield here as the opponent goes for an X's of bait. That still takes us out, but we do have a Moonblast loaded on Clefable. We throw it straight away, grabbing the final shield from the opponent, and we should be able to safely shield this up. No, we're actually going to no shield. The opponent goes for liquidation. We do hang on anyway, so we can make it to that Moonblast, and Moonblast will be taking out the Galissapod, and we're able to take that game. So going into the next battle, we see Defense from Deoxys in the lead, so pretty good to see it here as we do resist counter, and typically they're going to run either Rock Slide or Thunderbolt, and both would be super effective up against our flying types in the back. So they go for a Thunderbolt there, doesn't do too much damage up against Clefable. We're now going to go for a Moonblast, and Moonblast grabs a shield from the opponent. We actually get an attack drop, and we make it to a second Moonblast before the opponent throws their energy, and the opponent double shields their Defense from Deoxys. Very interesting here. Does that mean we're going to shield our Clefable? Yes, it does. They go for Psycho Boost. They've now 3-stage debuffed their attack here. So Psycho Boost doesn't do much damage. They then come in with Steelix, which is interesting, but unfortunately we can't really throw much there, so we swap into our Braviary and we can go for the close combat. Close combat obviously is super effective, but it's not going to do that much damage up against the very bulky Steelix. We will have to land 2 close combats to take them out, and unfortunately the opponent, very good timing there, throwing just before we make it to that close combat. We can now go for that close combat, but this will 4-stage debuff our defense, so they might be able to fully counter, farm us down, and that's exactly what they're able to do. Now we do have some energy on the Clefable, so we throw the Moonblast pretty much straight away. Moonblast gonna do some nice damage to the defense from Deoxys. We swap into our Aerodactyl and the opponent gonna go for the charge move. The opponent goes for the Thunderbolt, that is super effective, and now they swap into their Mandibuzz, so that explains why they double shielded their defense from Deoxys. They didn't want to see Clefable up against the Mandibuzz, but the opponent is going to allow us to make it to 2 rock sides here. I think the actual right play is probably to undercharge that, because now the opponent can once again get the full counter farm down, and they do come out with a Psycho Boost loaded. So smart play by the opponent. Psycho Boost takes out a Clefable, and unfortunately we lose that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. And with that being said, thank you all so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.